This episode is brought to you by Indie Insights. Indie Insights is our bi-weekly newsletter and love note to the film industry, movies, and the creatives that make them, not to mention you, our esteemed listeners. Inside, you'll find curated industry trends, articles, exclusive commentary, and underappreciated films from filmmakers like you worldwide. And the best part is that it is completely free. So join today at www.bonsai.film. It takes just a few seconds. And once you sign up, you'll get the very next newsletter on Friday morning. It's that simple. Go to www.bonsai.film to get Indie Insights, our bi-weekly newsletter, and join a network of film creatives just like yourself. And don't worry, we'll never sell your information or spam you with a bunch of nonsense emails, just the bi-weekly film industry goodness you need. And if you ever tire of Indie Insights, simply unsubscribe. No gimmicks, no games. So go to www.bonsai.film to get Indie Insights for free. You're listening to Make It, a podcast by Bonsai Creative that helps creatives in film get where they're going faster by sharing the advice, knowledge, and insights of professional creatives across the film industry. I'm your host, Chris Barkley.
Hi, folks. My name is Zair Montes. I'm a Latina actress, producer, and writer. You might know me for Rumba Love, that premiered last year in the Latin Heritage Month. And I'm currently working on an amazing movie called Dopamine.
Zair Montes, welcome to the Make It podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It is my distinct pleasure. And those two projects you mentioned, Rumba Love and Dopamine, I watched the trailer for both of them. They're awesome looking. I cannot wait to see Dopamine.
Thank you.
And just to give this audience a sense of what Dopamine is, it feels like it's a comedy. So it's a comedy where this young lady decides to take a pill that makes her orgasm anytime she sees something that, well, I don't know. Is it anytime she sees something that turns her on? Or makes her fall in love?
How it is.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like this scientist, she's creating this pill just to make it easy for everybody. And just like you take the pill, you fall in love. Right. But, she has to test it. And she tested in 3 individuals. One of them go to the Caribbean. And then she, all the chemical sensations, make her have orgasms every other second. So she struggles a lot because, of course, it's not like magic. No pill is magic, right?
Right.
And then she tested in another guy, and then he has to travel for business. And then it's the total opposite, situation. He falls in love, like romantic love. He can control it. And it's pretty funny and it's hilarious. And at the end of the day, a little bit of the message is that, love isn't chemical 100%. There are things you cannot control, right? And nowadays in our society, we're so used to, easy fixes for everything. And sometimes you just have to let it go and be yourself and be present and be willing to engage with another human being and spend time with that person. And then, magic happens, right? But the pill doesn't, determine who you are going to fall in love with and if that person is going to fall in love back, right? So it's a whole comedy and it has a lot of hilarious situations around these characters struggling with their hormones and the pill and the scientists and the whole thing. Yeah,
the trailer is fantastic. Whoever cuts your trailers does a wonderful job. I watched all your trailers. They're all
thank you. That's
They're
amazing.
all really well cut. And when this actually releases, I think you might find some of that timing magic, zeitgeist magic that we need as independent filmmakers, because one of the phenomenons coming out of COVID is that young people aren't having sex anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're actually afraid to fall in love, or they're afraid to get connected to someone, and for a variety of reasons, and maybe rightfully so. But here comes Dopamine, and it will be interesting to see. It's good to take on a serious topic from a comedic slant, because you can get your message. It sugarcoats the message. And so I'm rooting for you, and I will be first in line to watch it. Let me go back and do my job. You're welcome. Let me go back and do my job and actually introduce you to the audience properly, because you've done so much more. You are, you're honestly like a true multi-hyphenate here. So let's dig into your bio. Now, this is from the internet.
Okay.
So you just tell me if it's wrong. Okay.
Right, wrong. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Actress, producer, and writer Zair Montes started her career in the industry as an actress, performing in several roles in different countries in Latin America. In this regard, she has a vast experience in TV, theater, and films. In 2014, she produced and played a lead role in the American feature film Havana Instant, which is unbelievable. It made one of our researchers cry. And it's a drama shot on location in Cuba, and winner of the Innovation Award and the Ecumenial Award at Montreal World Film Festival 2015. In 2016, she produced the first horror movie to be shot between New York and Havana. It's called Havana Darkness. It looks incredibly creepy. Go check it out. And she also produced and acted in the movie Welcome to Acapulco with William Baldwin, Paul Sorvino, and Michael Madsen. What a cast. In 2018, she acted in the New York-based movie Respite and wrote her first theater play, The Flowers, which has now turned into a series. And you are working on season 2. I believe it premiered on Amazon Prime. Later that year, Zair produced the Mexican unit of the movie How I Got Here, starring Ron Perlman, who I just actually saw in a Hulu series, and he was great in that. In 2020, she finished principal photography of her latest film, the aforementioned Rumba Love, shot on locations in New York and Cuba, in which she acts and produces. Zair also wrote and acted in the web series A Couple in Quarantine, currently on their own streaming channel GC Flicks. And later that year, she produced Career Confessions with Jamila Jamil for Glamour, a YouTube original pilot that premiered in 2021. And she also premiered the short film Imagine and The Other Side of Things. And we mentioned you working on The Flower Season 2. Zair, that is a lot of work put in and passion. Did I get all the details right?
Yeah, you did. Honestly, yeah.
A lot of people hear their own bio and they don't get a chance to actually hear it all. And they're like, I did all that stuff?
Yeah, what happens to me is like, you just skip that. Let's make it shorter. Like, we don't have to say that much. It's pretentious. It's like, Not
on this podcast, because on this one, we want people to listen to this over and over and over again throughout time, and for it to be sort of earmarked as, like I mentioned before, like your audio resume. This is evergreen, if you will. So in the spirit of that, can you describe growing up in Caracas, Venezuela, and growing up in your family, what that was like?
Sure. I loved it, honestly. I can say that I had a beautiful childhood in Caracas, in Venezuela. My parents were coming from Colombia, so they were immigrants. And Venezuela had this thing that it was kind of a land of immigrants, after the Second World War. A lot of people from Spain, Portuguese, Lebanon, Italy, went to live in Venezuela. So it was common to have like a huge, immigration population. So I can say that I grew up with, there was no many like racial things as, strong as or rooted as any other country. And I grew up with friends from Italy, France, Peru, Colombia. It was hard to find like people who were like only from Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty nice and cool. I had a blast. I went to the university in Venezuela. I studied translation, English translation, and Portuguese at the time. And I started my career as an actress in Venezuela. I did, I started doing soap operas and movies, Venezuelan movies. And in 2010, I moved to Colombia because the industry was like, the Latino industry was like, booming in Colombia.
Mm-hmm.
We had like Fox and, all these like big companies producing like MTV and, producing content in Colombia for Latin America. So I moved to Colombia and I continued acting there for a little while. TV series. I did something for MTV, for local channels. I did a movie, and that movie is called Carousel. And that kind of introduced me to the world of, I started flirting with what's going on the other side of, the screen,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
On the behind the scene. So after that movie, I kind of started learning about post-production, about editing, and about producing in general, because before that, I was just an actress. And it's beautiful. I love being an actress. It's like my passion number one. But sometimes when you are just an actor, you're so like oblivious of so many things that happen on the other side. And when you kind of like have the opportunity to experience that, then the world kind of expands, or at least that was my experience. So that kind of brought me little by little into the first movie that I produced, which is Havana Instant, that we went to Cuba and shot it in Cuba. And that was like, like that changed my life, that project, as an actress and as a human being.
Yeah, we're going to dig into that, all those things you said, actually, and there was a lot to dig into. I certainly didn't realize it, and I don't think a lot of people in this audience would realize that growing up in Caracas is kind of like being, at least when you grew up, it's kind of like being in New York or LA, where no one is from there.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting concept that probably helps you migrate to LA and New York a little easier, perhaps.
Yeah, well, yes, I know. I'm going to tell you what happens. I think like in my generation, like our parents were the ones who arrived in Venezuela, right? So we were all like, we were born in Venezuela, but we were very open all the time with immigration. I'm generalizing. I'm not saying there was no like, racism or rejections or, immigration issues, but in general, it was very open. So what happens is that when Venezuelans go, and migrate to different countries, they expect the same. And they have issues adapting and mingling, because it's hard for them to kind of like, not think about, but back in the past, we treated people differently, or we were this and that, and this was so good. And of course, we have been immigrants because of most of the times because of the political situation. So that makes things worse, because in certain immigrations, you want to, and I can say that's my case, and that's why it wasn't that difficult for me. I really wanted to do more professionally than what I was doing in Venezuela. And my first step in that regard was to go to Colombia. Probably if the political situation was not that bad, maybe I would I would have stayed longer in Venezuela. I don't know.
That's interesting.
I cannot tell you that for a fact. But I did know that I wanted to. I wasn't leaving because I felt that I was, losing my democracy or freedom or opportunities, or I was leaving mostly because I wanted more. I had done soap operas. I had been the lead in those soap operas. I'd done theater. I'd done movies. And then it was like, now what? Right?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
When I saw everything that was happening in Colombia, and Colombia was coming with a closer approach to, the American way of producing, like more cinematic, less soapy. So I got attracted to that. So I moved to Colombia to expand my career. Yeah. And then when I went to Mexico and then ended up in the US, was kind of for the same reason.
Yeah. And
I don't know if that answered the question or if I just made it more convoluted.
Every time you speak, I learn something new. I think that's pretty good. And we interviewed Florencia Lozano, and she did soaps for years, and she talked about how much of a grind it is because you're shooting like 65 pages a day. Like it's kind of like you can burn out. You either get used to that lifestyle of like the scheduling of a soap, or you get burnt out on it and want to leave it for good. Yeah.
It has, I mean, the pros on that is that you have, like, you train your memory. So like, it's a good training for your memory.
Oh yeah.
Because you have to learn all that, by heart, and you have this like training. That's a good, aspect of it. But of course you compromise quality and not only the actors deliver, but also like the product, it's not the same.
Yeah.
It's not it's not the best quality. It's not, you don't have time or space to take care of things that you should be taking care of. So
that's a good point. You mentioned leaving Venezuela to do more. What is the state of independent film and filmmaking in Venezuela today? Do you know? Well,
it's not the same. Obviously, like Venezuela has gone through a lot of ups and downs. Mm-hmm. When I left, productions were diminishing because, the economic instability was huge, and it affected, like, people didn't want to put their money, So you will always have to go through institutions, to get funding and grants to do projects. But after that, kind of like the whole market shut down for a while.
Hyperinflation, right?
Networks. Yeah. And the insecurity and the networks were not capable of, keeping up with the inflation and, with the political instability. So it shut down for a while. Now I'm seeing more like people willing to go back, and there has been like a new, like, group of people who are doing independent movies and a lot of theater. Theater has, aside from the pandemic time, like theater was like strong in Venezuela. Mm-hmm. And so I think people are finding the way to continue creating and doing. And there are a lot of talents, like good talents in Venezuela. And I see also many actors who are based in the US or Colombia or Mexico. They go back to Venezuela and shoot the movie and then come back. I haven't had the chance. I'd love to. But yeah, so you see a lot of that and a lot of aperture, and now even co-productions with other countries again. It's not ideal. It's not how it was before, everything started, going down the drain. But it's, people, there are a lot of people willing to, keep up and fight and do things. And I admire that. People who never left and who are just fighting to have, the normalcy that they deserve.
And we'll circle back on this a little bit more as we go, but thank you for sharing that. It's a really important point as we go along in the conversation that we'll definitely circle back on. Was there a moment that you can remember growing up? Could be a moment of inspiration. It could be something you did. It could be something you saw. That moment where you knew, starting this day going forward, I'm going to live a creative life.
Well, I think I'm not sure if I have a particular moment, but I do know that I was always attracted to everything that seemed artistic or, you know, everything from even from sports to, you know, like I was always like in love with, you know, if there was some opportunity to paint or if there was some opportunity to, you know, to do modeling or, you know, commercials or seeing kids on television would make me like go like, wow, like, yeah, I want that. Like, and I don't come from a family with artistic thing, like not my mom or my dad, none of them, like they are zero, no sense of,
how did this happen?
So I don't know, but I think they also sparked my curiosity. So if I wanted to just explore here, like dance, they would just take me to dance. If I wanted to, you know, to do like all the things that I did at school, like theater at school and all that, they were like supporting it. So my mom used to say that I was so like annoying with, I want to get on like on TV. I want to, and she told me, when you turn 15, I'll just pay for, you know, the modeling thing. And then you'll do like the agency. And I promise. Yeah. She thought I was going to forget, but I always brought it back. And she also like, I went and researched by myself when I was 12, like seeing like how kids got into television, how kids would do commercials. And I found an agency and I was like 12, but she took me to, you know, 10 auditions out of the 100 that they received, because she was like, you know, she had to drive me and spend the afternoon and the whole thing. But she helped me. And I remember once I booked a small kind of background role in a TV series for teenagers. And I was like 13, I was in high school, and my dad took me and we stood there until 2 a.m. and he was there with me, like, and I had to go to school the next day. So they were very supportive. And I think that, you know, helped me move on and continue exploring that. Although I have to say that when I entered college and I was going to an audition, but at the time I had done few commercials here and there, but nothing substantial. I was like 16. Right. And I'm going to an audition and my dad told me, so you're now going to college, you know, like you explore, it's been cool, but don't you want to move on in your life? Do you want to, you know? And I remember like my faith at that time and my belief was so like unshakable that I'm like, no, I know I'm going to continue doing this and it's going to get better and better. And it happened. Yeah. And interesting enough, like the short film that I did recently, The Other Side of Things.
Yep. Watched it.
It's an invitation for me to reconnect with my faith, because I think as we grow old and become adults, we lose that, you know, belief, right? Mm-hmm. We lose the capacity. We're like, yeah, right. No, like I think, and I have struggled with it throughout my journey. And when I go back, when I was like in that conversation with my father, I had it 100%. No one could tell me otherwise. Yeah. And that's a little bit what I wanted to kind of like what I wanted to recreate in the short film. Is this, you know, idea that if we could believe like 1% more every day, you know, would be able to get more done or accomplished. But we have the noise, we have personal situations, adulthood life, you name it, right? And it gets in the way sometimes.
It is beautifully put. I have 100 creatives around me and sort of that circle around this podcast and around our little company that deal with that every day. Self-doubt. Why am I doing this? Or they'll sort of kowtow a little bit and say, well, it doesn't matter if you make it or if you're famous or if you're doing good work. You're good enough as you are. And there's a part of that that's absolutely true. But I often wonder if they even believe it when they say it, because they do want something more. They do want something more substantial. They do want to have some notoriety. And I think
that's human being essence.
Yeah.
It's we want to strive for more, and we always want more. And I think what I have personally experienced, because I think the journey of an artist is, it has a lot of ups and downs and self-doubt. But I think the problem is when you start diminishing what you have done, because it's never good enough, because it's not the next level yet. Right?
Yes, I agree with that. There's you, the person, and there's you, the creative that wants to express.
Yeah.
And you can't chop down the version that is you, the human, because the expressive artist hasn't done the thing you thought it or they should do by now. Right? You're still a great person. You're still valid. You still have your rights. You still have, all your validity. And just keep chopping at that tree and keep making things and see where it takes you. I've had no problem admitting, and maybe I should be ashamed of it, but I've had no problem in my life admitting that my primary goal is to be remembered. And I've said on this podcast before, part of why I do it is because this will outlive me. It's part of it. And that just is the truth about me. And it's cathartic to say it out loud.
Totally.
And to just admit to it and not play a status game or play any game around it whatsoever. The moment in your short film that I thought illustrates your point really well is when the mom is driving the SUV. Your character is driving the SUV, and it's been made up to look like a jet. And your son's like, oh, there's my jet. He really believes.
Yeah.
Even if he believes. And then these other kids are there, and it's like a metaphor. These other kids are like your peers around you who are shitting on you, telling you, oh, that's not a jet.
Of course. Yeah.
That's just a car with wings, and a nose on it. And we have to push that negativity out of our lives. So I enjoyed the short film, and it made sense.
Just to add something else,
please.
Like sometimes we don't need those kids. Sometimes we don't need those kids to tell us that's just a shitty car, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's just our mind tells us, what you're doing this. This is not that good. Like, look on Instagram. What he's doing is good. Look in social media, right? Compare yourself. Like, what are you trying to do with your little car with, like cardboard wings, right?
Yeah.
No, look at the real jet, right? So what do you think you are? And sometimes you don't, most of the time you have those kids around you telling you that, but many times it's your mind. Mm-hmm. You're telling that to yourself. Yeah.
You're making it everything about you. And sometimes it's not about you. Right.
Yeah.
And it's a really good point. Comparison is hell. That's not my line. It's somebody else's line. I just can't remember who said it, but I've always hung on to it. And I find it to be very true, because once you start, especially on social media, because it's comparison at scale. And so it hurts that much more deeply. You mentioned your parents, but you're also close with your grandparents. I'm curious, your grandma's 95 now. Have you, Have you learned, what did she think about your career?
Research.
Yes. Yeah. We're known for that here on the Make It podcast. And we have to thank our research team for that. She's 95 years old. Has she given you any wisdom that you take with you in your career? What does she think about this career you've chosen? Being from a different generation,
Yeah, I love my grandmother, and I have, this, I love, to spend time with, old people in general. I have, I find a lot of, wisdom in old people. And with my grandmother, she raised me as well, right? She was with me when my mom was studying and working sometimes.
Yeah.
So she's very influential in my life. But and I'm going to be super open.
Please.
She didn't have an easy life from the moment she was born. She was a widow with 6 kids when she was 20 years old, no money. She has lived a life of suffering, right? And the biggest lesson I'm learning from her is, believe it or not, is trying to disattach from this victim mode, this way of seeing all the negativity and not being able to see the positive. Because unfortunately, the loop that she has developed and created in her mind for over the years is that everything bad happens to her, is that she has never been able to be happy, is that, her daughters and husband did this, her, always in that loop of negativity. And as she's 95 years old, she carries that with her, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's focusing on whatever is bad instead of, the fact that, she's alive, that she's in a house, in which she has love. So, of course, she's senile now a little bit, so that makes it worse.
Right.
But to me, it's like I see her and I see how she raised this family and how she raised me, and she was so such a good mother to me, and how she would do everything for me. And she's amazing. And when she sees me, she's just she smiles and she's happy when I call her, when I FaceTime with her, or when she was in Colombia at some point, a year ago, and she was in a bad situation, and I just took her and brought her to Venezuela with my mom. And so she's happy when she sees me. But I try to just show her that happiness could be just those moments, right? But it's also I'm learning, if I continue or if I keep with certain patterns, I might be that person when you're old that you're not, you focus on the negative.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And she has had that, but she didn't know any better. She has been struggling with poverty, with, being a widow, no money, a lot of, difficult situations in her life. And and when you're in survival mode, and that's it, there's nothing or nobody who can just, take you out of that space on time. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it's really true. I spent a little bit of time living in my white 4-door Honda Accord in the parking lot of a grocery store. And I could look on that time as a huge mistake, and maybe it was, and a failure, and my inability to stand on my own 2 feet as an adult. But I look back on it now as proof that I don't need all the trappings that I have to survive. I have a pretty cushy life. My friends from my old neighborhood that I grew up in would call me soft today, but I don't mind it, and I'm able to have that positive outlook because I know I could go back and do that because I've done it already. I could go live in a car. I could be homeless. I could be around a bunch of negative people that aren't going anywhere and still thrive within that context. I've done that. I have that basis, and I choose to look at it that way. Like, hey, it's all good. Whereas if I hadn't have done that and somehow everything got taken away from me, if I hadn't had that past, oh my God, I'd probably fall apart.
Yeah.
I'd be on suicide watch, maybe, who knows, but not now.
Yeah.
I could go live in a cardboard box for a while. I honestly feel that way. Like I could do it. I wouldn't be happy, but I could do it.
Yeah. But because you have found out that, eventually things are going to be okay.
That's right.
Right. Like when you have gone through that experience and you just know that you can, get out of it.
Yeah.
Like that fear is not in there anymore.
Yeah. And you find out how to use your best skills. I've never really psychoanalyzed myself until this very moment and thinking about like how I got out of that jam, because you brought it up, and I leaned heavily on my charisma and sort of my gift of gab. I was able to talk to people, and I talked my way into sleeping on someone's floor. Why their floor? Because the couch was already taken by another guy like me who was equally as charismatic and had the gift of gab. He was better than me because he got the couch. And, and so, but hey, I'm ambitious. So I worked my way up from the floor to the couch in his apartment. And when that guy moved out, and that was all I needed. That was stability that allowed me to do some different things. I mean, it's amazing what you can accomplish if you can just get your baseline needs handled. Then you can go out and get a job interview, or you can do some different things or create. So I think a lot of people who are in that jam are really they're like one layer of Maslow's hierarchy of need away from like doing what they want to do, or being able to at least try to do those things. I want to get into some of the film stuff, and this audience has come to know us for revealing and trying to unpack some of the ways that incredibly productive independent filmmakers like yourself and Guillermo, by the way, Ivan, have, how you've done it, those tools, and unpacking those tools and processes. So a lot of your storylines, you just mentioned the other side of things, they are painful storylines. They're impactful. Are they at all autobiographical? How do you, as a team, and your production company is Golden, am I pronouncing this right? Ceiba? Ceiba, Golden Ceiba Productions, and we'll talk about that in a second. How do you come up with your movie ideas?
Well, honestly, it's been pretty organic. Havana Instant was particularly a story that Guillermo wanted to tell. Mm-hmm. He grew up in Cuba, and he grew up in that neighborhood where we shot the movie.
Oh, and
wow. And it's pretty interesting because before he wrote that movie, we were in Cannes, in the market, mm-hmm. in the film market. We had done a very indie movie, the first one that we did completely in English, and it was called Blue Family. Mm-hmm. And we were like shopping it around, and it had a screening in the market. So we took some meetings with other producers and people introducing Golden Ceiba and what we wanted to do. So we met with one producer. You know how those meetings are. They could be very nice, condescending, or they could be very nasty, or they could be genuine. So you have the whole, package. So we're with this producer, and he goes on like, "You're doing what? But where are you from?" And he was saying, "I'm from Mexico, but I grew up in Cuba." And he was like, "Where are you from?" "Well, I'm from Venezuela. I grew up in Venezuela. I've lived in Colombia." "And you're doing what?"
Yeah.
And movies in English? go back to your roots. Do what you like. You have to do Latino movies. And it was like an awful meeting, and we left like, how dare him? Like, he doesn't know what we're doing and what we're building, and we want to, be international and this and this and that. But then it kept us thinking, and we were like, well, there is something that we should just consider. Mm-hmm. And why don't we do something that's about our roots? It doesn't mean that we are just going to focus on Latina content, but we should probably, like, instead of continuing like here, asking for money for, big or, high budget movies when we have no credentials, let's go and do something with what we have. Let's put it out there.
Brilliant.
And that was kind of like how Havana Instant started. Like, Guillermo came back he was living in New York at a time. I was still in Venezuela, and I was in Colombia and Mexico, but I went back to Venezuela at that time, and he wrote the script like in 3 weeks.
Wow.
And he told me, we're doing this movie. Let's do it in Cuba. We didn't know how. Let's do it in my neighborhood. And we just need, camera and people and petty cash for, food and, and let's make it happen. Right.
Was that story real, by the way? Was the storyline of that autobiographical, or was that, did he just come up with that out of his mind?
Some moments, but not the ALS is not, it's not real.
Yeah. That's even more remarkable to have that kind of concept and knock it out in 3 weeks. Sorry to interject. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, and then I went to Colombia. I gathered with a group of friends, filmmaker friends, and one of them said, I'll put the camera. My best friend, who's also the other actress in the movie, Abril, she brought some money to buy for the tickets, and we put together a team. The DP came from Colombia. It's an amazing DP, but he loved the idea and he jumped on board. And so here we were like figuring out how we would, kind of like smuggle the camera into Cuba, because we were not going to go like the government route, right? So, and we were like, okay, you take the tripod and you'll take the brain and you'll do this. And so,
do you remember what you guys shot that on? What camera? What kind of camera?
On a red.
It was a red. You guys
camera.
Had a red?
Yeah.
All right. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So it was like everything was meant to be. We got to this neighborhood and we were like sleeping. Like we lived the Cuban experience. Everybody, like, we were in the house of the woman who raised Guillermo, and she would sleep in the couch in the living room. So to give us her bedroom, and another neighbor was hosting somebody else, and the other neighbor, and she was doing the catering, and breakfast was bread.
I was going to ask, how did you do crafting? Yeah. Okay.
So a lot of coffee, but it was a beautiful experience because something that I take with me in that project. It was my first time producing, so I was scared.
Right.
We didn't have, we didn't have internet. We had nothing. Like, I have to do the call sheets like by handwriting.
Yeah.
Paste it in the door.
Yeah.
In the office, room, but that was like the house where we were staying. So every time after we finished the day, everybody would have to go and see what was happening the next day, because I had no way to print. I had no way to just, send emails or anything.
Wow.
So, but it was beautiful.
I bet your handwriting was unbelievable.
Well, I mean, they managed to understand what it was.
Yeah.
So, but it was beautiful because we were shooting in the neighborhood, and, the neighbors would see us and they come and offer coffee out of the blue. They were helping us. They were excited that we were there. So I was able to experience so much empathy from people who had absolutely nothing. Yeah. And people who were even able to share and to split and, to give what they don't have, their little coffee, their room, their water. When we run out of water in like some of the apartments were running out of water, they will like shower here and have some extra water, like the old school. So it was so beautiful. It was a beautiful experience for everybody. And I think that's the magic of that project in particular.
There's something about an indie set when everybody pitches in, especially the community. One of our feature films we did named Adult Interference, we had a similar situation. And this is a movie you can see all over the world. It's Kate Upton's last feature film. And meanwhile, we had one of the writers, Ted Welch, his mom making the food, amazing food, by the way, for the whole crafty. So we had no crafty expense. In another one of our movies, another version of You, it was done in sort of the artsy part of one. Well, part of it was shot in the artsy part of Nashville. It was also shot in Iceland and in France. And when we were in Nashville, all these coffee shops, all the little local businesses, they came and pitched in, helped us out. We got locations for free. And that's just like the true indie way. That's incredible.
That's beautiful.
I will circle back.
I want to see your
Cuba.
Movies.
Oh, please. I'll send you some links.
Please.
And, by the way, when I saw Abril dancing with Christopher in Havana Instant, a song came to mind. I'm going to send you that song as well. That I thought, oh, what if this were the score? You can send it to her. I think she might get a kick out of it. I do want to just circle back to the name again, Golden Ceiba Productions. So for the audience, this is spelled Ceiba, and it's a tree in the Mayan culture that has a special meaning. So I'm curious. My company is also named after a tree, and there's a reason why. So Bonsai Creative. Why did you name your company after a tree? What does the Ceiba tree mean to you and Guillermo?
Well, two things. For Guillermo, in the more personal aspect of it, when he was studying in Cuba and he was starving and he had nothing, he would just go and study under a big ceiba tree that they have in Cuba, in the downtown in Cuba. It's insanely big, and it has a lot of their African traditions and cultures attribute that tree with a lot of power, and you give tribute to that tree. You can just kind of like pray to the tree and all that. But that tree in many cultures in Latin America, including the Mayan, is like the connection between earth and heaven, right?
Okay, yeah.
And the place that shelters, living species. So we found that was kind of like sort of what we wanted to do, to create a big family and to be creative with friends, and that we can shelter and that we can just, like the branches in the tree, create something that connects, above and beyond.
It's very beautiful. And now that I come to think of it, I want to say Darren Aronofsky, who is my favorite director, he had a movie called The Fountain, and it featured a tree, and I think it was a ceiba tree. I will go back and check that out. I think that was the fountain of youth, or the eternal life, tree of life, basically.
Yeah,
is what it was.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go check that out. Thank you so much for giving me that background. Guillermo grew up in Cuba. I didn't know that until you told me. I don't know how many filmmakers come out of Cuba. My guess would be that not many. Feel free to correct me. I'm curious what his ambition and talent has meant to the community in Cuba. Do you know?
Yeah, well, again, the way when we have been back to Cuba and especially shooting movies, like there is this spirit of, the community is proud, right? It's proud of him. And I think he's very, like, they loved him so much in there because he's not Cuban. He's Mexican.
Right.
And he was an actor kid in Mexico, because he does come from a family of filmmakers and artists.
Oh, okay.
So he has that in his blood.
Mm-hmm.
So when he was here, he was into sports here. Then his best friend passed away because of one of the movies he had done as a hobby. He got a scholarship in Cuba.
Mm-hmm.
So he went to Cuba, and he took it because, you know, his best friend had passed away and he couldn't go back to sports. So he goes to Cuba and he takes a scholarship, but he needed to do to finish high school. So he finished high school in Cuba, and then he did the whole career in Cuba. But he was not in a good economic situation. His family, he goes there and he gets robbed. So he was raised like a Cuban kid. And this amazing woman, she just took him under his wings. She was a single mother with 2 kids. And she said, I'll feed you. You'll have a roof.
Amazing.
And you came here to study, and you're going to study, right?
Yeah.
So he has that sense of, you know, giving back to that community, because, you know, to this day, she's his mom.
Yeah.
And he goes back to Cuba, and he never, like, every time he can, he brings a project, and then he gives them work, because it's a very, very, like, it's a poor community. It's they struggle with a lot of, you know, scarcity and necessity. So when we go, and it's like, we teach you how to do certain things, we employ you, we, you know, give you salary, and it's like the way to contribute back to everything that, you know, they did as a community for him, and how he, I mean, like, teenager years are like the years that could affect your, you know, who you are or who you become as an adult. And he spent those years in Cuba. So he's like as Cuban as he could be Mexican.
Got it. Yeah, it's a beautiful story. And I'm curious for you to tell me the trick, the secret of getting an American-made movie out of Cuba. Havana Instant was the first movie in 50 years to do this.
Yeah.
It's no little feat. I think I have a sense after that story as to how you were able to do it.
Yeah.
Are there any tricks for filmmakers who didn't grow up the way Guillermo grew up to shoot in Cuba and actually get their film out of there?
Now it's more open in that regard. You can always go like the Avengers route, and, you know, give the government a lot of money, and just get it done. Mm-hmm. But now there are more like independent filmmakers in Cuba who can even offer those services, and they can just prepare everything for you as a filmmaker to come there and shoot, you know.
Would you recommend doing the location scout remote, hiring somebody to do it there versus you going yourself?
Producing with them. Yeah.
Okay.
But they are not the governmental entity. They are independent filmmakers.
Got it.
So they know how to, you know, to make sure that you have, you know, what you need, and that you, like, now I think that when Obama opened the relations again with Cuba, there was a lot of, you know, aperture in that regard.
Got it. Yeah.
I don't know how it is now. Honestly, after the pandemic, things have gotten really rough in Cuba. But yeah, I mean, I know that there were filmmaking companies that, like, the last time we went to shoot Rumba Love, we had to do a pickup, the year before we premiere. We had to do pickups in Cuba, and in this time we didn't go the route of smuggling the camera and just getting into trouble. We rented the camera from a film production company, an independent one in Cuba.
Okay.
And so they help us find locations. And so it was, you know, it was way easier. And of course, you're not, I mean, you know, your scripts cannot obviously be against, you know, the government, political, like communism, and our stories are nothing of the sort. So that's also something to take into consideration if you want to just, talk, like speak bad about the communism and the whole thing, and then just try to do something, then it's not going to be possible.
Right. You don't film Hunt for Red October in Russia.
Yeah. And something else we did with our first movie is like we didn't bring any American crew, because also it was hard, for Americans couldn't just, get in. After Obama, we were doing Havana Darkness, and we arrived like 2 weeks after Obama went to Cuba, and they opened the embassy and the whole thing. And we had an amazing story with our first assistant director.
Yeah.
He's this, 70 years old, red, big guy, American. And he's amazing. He's a great stunt coordinator. He's done a lot of Hollywood movies and the whole thing. And so he was scared, but he wanted to go. So we took him to Cuba. He had a blast. Last day, we wrap. Everything's great. And we go to just hang out and show Cuba to everybody, because we didn't have the chance before. And we show them all the experience, from taking the guagua and, public transportation and, the whole thing. On our way back, we're taking the guagua, and it's like rush hour, and it's like
Now, what is a guagua?
It's like a bus, like the bus.
Okay, got it. Okay.
The public transportation, with like 100 people inside, right?
Yeah.
So we're getting back in the bus, and we say, just careful with your pockets. No problem. We get in. 5 minutes later, he starts, I don't have my passport. We stopped the Wawa. Like, people were like, we don't have your passport. Move on, blah, blah. So we arrived home, and we were supposed to take, to get out of Cuba the next day. But he lost his American passport in Cuba.
Oh, my gosh.
So we were into this crisis. He was like into this crisis. And the only thing we could do was take him to the embassy, right? The American embassy that was just opened 2 weeks ago. But there was a lot of confusion. We didn't know what to expect. So they went to the embassy. They let him in, of course, only him, not Guillermo, not me.
Right.
And he stood there like for 3-4 hours. And then he comes back and he says, well, I'm done. I have a passport. They apologized to me. I was the only American in the whole building. They apologized to me because it took them so long to figure out how to make a passport, because it's the first time after, 1959 that, an American passport is made in Cuba.
Oh, wow.
So he has the first passport made in Cuba.
That's
after
wonderful.
The whole revolution.
So I assume there's some person in Cuba walking around and traveling the world under his name that actually has his real passport.
Probably, I don't know.
It's like a blessing on both sides, maybe. Who knows? I know that you guys at GCP talk about sort of having a different model for indie filmmakers. What is your approach to financing?
Well, we have, what I think is happening is that like our industry moves and changes so fast that you have to kind of like figure out a way to keep up with things that worked. Like our first movies were friends and family, equity, investment, contributions. We have then, partnered up with like Welcome to Acapulco was a mix between a co-production with Bulgari. They brought half of the money. We went to Acapulco and we brought government incentives like catering, security, transportation, accommodation with the relationships we had with that state in particular. And so it's been a mix. We have done brands, product placement and brands.
Yeah.
So it's I cannot tell you that one thing, it's the only thing that works. What I know for a fact is that nowadays it's harder to get like private investors, right? People are more, because of all the streaming platforms and, of all the access to content, sometimes it's hard to bring a model to return investment. So now we're like focusing more on brands willing to do product placement. I know we haven't gotten there yet, but I know a lot of people are using NFT as a way to invest and to raise money. And of course, going to the States, like if it's in the US, like with tax rebates, always helps a lot. And a little bit of everything. It's like what seems to be working for even crowdfunding for certain projects. But I think it's just like you have to be like the water, like Bruce Lee says.
Like Bruce Lee, one of our favorite quotes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it just, see where the opportunity is. Sometimes we just like with the flowers, we partnered up with the hotel, the resort, and they gave us all the accommodation, the food, the locations. And we created a series of not only the product placement, that it's, the hotel is like another character in the series, but also we did like commercials for them and, pictures and things that would help their marketing campaign. So that's how we have been doing.
Yeah,
and some other projects where it's just like we offer the production services and they bring the money and we can probably contribute with certain, if you shoot in Mexico.
It's like a partnership then. It's like, hey, we'll bring the production, you bring the money, let's make this thing happen.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like a co-production. And on the NFT thing or Web3, I'm seeing DAOs, so these decentralized organizations where the one that made the news is that a DAO tried to buy, I think, like the Bill of Rights or the Constitution or something like that. It was something giant where it was going to cost millions and millions of dollars. And they almost raised enough money to get it. But basically, it runs through smart contracts on Web3, probably through Ethereum or Ethereum 2, which is coming. And every person in the DAO owns a little bit, like gets a royalty payment from the profits of the film. But because DAOs don't, like if you have a syndicate investment group, I think like you have to cap out at 250 people. And if you have like there are all these different rules. Like if you go equity investor, your investors still have to be accredited, or maybe it's just a gift. And then, with Kickstarter and Indiegogo, you're kind of like competing against every single person that wants money in the world. Whereas if you can create a DAO, it's like a group just for your production company or just for your films. And they all kind of pitch in, and there can be 1 million people in your DAO. Like they can literally just give $1 each. And so I think it's a really interesting future. And I haven't seen any independent film really truly take advantage of it to its full capacity yet. So I'm curious to see what you guys end up doing with that and what others end up doing with it.
I gotta confess, I have a lot to study in that regard, because sometimes it's like I don't remember which actor also like raised a lot of money, like a famous Hollywood actor, and they sold the NFT, the character, and just they sold like crazy amount of money. But also it goes down to the same marketing thing. When you put something like in the web. So it's like, if no one knows about you, like you get lost in that, deep web, right? So you have to figure out a way to just, be seen. Kind of like what you mentioned of Indiegogo and all these crowdfunding, like how many movies you'll see there, right?
Right.
So then it'll end up being like you'll have to start with your friends and family again.
Yeah.
Unless, there is a lot of creativity that you need to put into, turn it around
building that.
and building up, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'm with you. I think that's the future, and we all need to, like, to survive. We need to adapt and we need to evolve with all the trends, you know, and this is coming, and this is not going back any soon. So
yeah, it'll go up and down like any market does, but it's not going back, to your point. It's not going away. And
it's not
frankly,
going away.
Creators like yourself have a massive advantage because you're already a storyteller. And all an NFT is a story, is a narrative about why something is valuable. A lot of things are just a narrative about why something is valuable.
Yeah.
The US dollars you have in your pocket are just paper, but we have a narrative because it's not backed by gold or any other kind of money. It's strictly fiat. Most of the money we use is digital. It's never printed. I think 99% of all money is digital. And so we tell ourselves a narrative and a story about why this has value and why it will buy bread. True. And we can do the same thing with our own projects on Web3, through Ethereum, and through NFT. So I'm excited to see what's next. I noticed that you and Guillermo both studied at the New York City Drama School HB Studio, and I want to say that's for Herbert Berghoff. I need to study him more.
Yeah, I know the Hagen.
I don't know exactly. He obviously did some great things in acting. I need to shame on me. I need to look up that some more. You guys had already acted before you attended, so I'm just curious. Did it improve your acting skills? Do you recommend acting school for all the actors? Because one thing that stands out about you is your attention to the eye line. I noticed that you're really good at that. And it might just be the fact that you have super sincere eyes, and it really shows up on camera. It's one of my favorite features of your acting is how you're able to humanize yourself, which is super difficult when you're frankly as beautiful as you are, right? So it's like, oh, that's a real person. So with all that context, what would you say about acting school, and what advice would you give to actors that are thinking about it or not thinking about it?
Yeah, I loved it. Like, I wouldn't change that experience for anything. And I just want to remind you that I came from, like, studying acting in Spanish, and then, doing content in Spanish and transitioning and acting in a different language. And clearly it's not my English is not like, my second language. Like, if I had, like any Latinos that are born and raised in the US, right?
Right.
So the transition was very difficult, and, going back to school after being working for so long, but going back to school in English and, being exposed to techniques and to books and to literature that that was new to me, was like a great experience. And I think my creative awakening after going to school was, kind of like in part because, like, my creative awakening as a writer especially came after that period. That was the first time I dared to play around with, lines and thinking about, like, the short, the theater play, and, and it all came from that. So I strongly recommend it to my Latino friends. I recommend them to do it in English because many of them go to New York and go to LA and take the Spanish classes. And it's just like, you already have that in you.
Yeah, it's already a strength.
And I think studying is, it's useful for, for everybody, like training. It's like when you're not acting every day, going to school is a way to train your craft, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely recommend it. And I was lucky because I did it many years after Guillermo. So I knew, like, the teachers that I want to experience, and, I had that guidance in that regard. So I had a blast.
Perfect. You heard it here first, right from the mind of Zair. And you mentioned earlier, this is a callback. Now, you are welcome to not answer this. So I'll preface that. But you mentioned earlier in the conversation that when you did Havana Instant, it changed your life professionally and personally. Now, when you said personally, is that because you met Guillermo there and kind of fell in love there, or no?
No, we have met way before. We met in Colombia. We shot this movie together. He was the director. I was just an actress, and we met way before. Then we spent some time between Mexico and Colombia, and we did this movie, the first one that I told you, Blue Family, that we took to Cannes.
Yeah.
And so we've been together in Cuba. To me, what I meant by it changed my life personally and professionally is because one thing that I already told you, like seeing the human kindness in that people in that community that had nothing and still they were willing to share and give, was heartbreaking for me. The fact that it challenged me as a producer that I hadn't been before.
Right.
Because I had to figure out how to sort out things, not with the, common sense, but I needed to use creativity. Yeah. I needed to figure out, like, we had one day that, we have a power shortage and we had no light, and we needed to plug in the batteries for the camera. Or
how did you get around that? Just for the audience to know, like, what if the power goes out on them? What do you do?
It was like a moment, like half an hour, like just figuring out it's coming, it's not coming. No one knows. It's Cuba. Like, we have no idea of anything. People in there have no idea of anything, right? So they could tell you it could be the whole day. It could be 2 hours. And it's like, and I have, AD and director telling me, like, we need to make the day, right? And I'm like, so what do we do? So, and then I start asking the Cubans, and they're like, no, it's just the neighborhood. Like, we can go to the other neighborhood and they have electricity. So, well, let's do it. And then you have the cars, and that was another, nightmare to deal with, the gas and the cars. So waiting for 15,
all the
20
cars
minutes.
Are old there.
Yes. Yeah. And the gas was an issue to get, expensive and blah, blah. So I get into a car. They drop me in another neighborhood. I'm not from there.
Yeah.
And they know it. And I'm here with my batteries, right?
Yeah.
Asking, knocking on doors and asking people if they let me just plug in the cameras for a while because we're doing something in the other neighborhood. And so, but again, it was like the human kindness. Like, I managed to get where to plug. I just sat there outside in the street, like waiting for, the batteries to get charged. And then 2 hours later, I came back with the battery on time for the change. And then we made the day. And then, like, the light, the energy came back, like, at night. So for the next day, we were good again.
You were good.
But,
again.
Those kind of things, like, challenged me and changed me because, this side, again, I told you before, like, when you're an actor, you're just like into your, craft and trying to, you deal with yourself and you're just acting and that's it.
Right.
But here, like, being a producer with no resources, like, made me understand that there's, the power of willpower, right? And how many things you can do it if you, like, my imagination and my creativity, like, boomed. And it also made me see that I could do it, that I could produce. I was scared to death at the beginning because I was going to produce and I had never done it.
Yeah, conquering fear.
All I knew about producing was, like, bringing coffee. That I did a lot as well. But,
which is like it's like you knew how to PA, but you didn't know how to produce.
Craft to PA.
Yeah, and it's weird. It's like you conquer fear, and then you realize it's all paper tigers, and you can do it. The reason, selfishly, that I asked about maybe falling in love on set is because I have noticed a few different times in my experience, people fall in love on set and then they fall out of love as soon as the movie is over.
Yeah.
I'm curious can you give us any tips? Do you know, like, how can you tell if set love is real love?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. What I can tell you from my experience is that Guillermo and I clicked from the audition session. And then we had a beautiful rehearsal time in that movie. It was a movie with resources, so we were rehearsing for a month. And during the rehearsals, we, developed a friendship, and, we were sharing, we were having, dinner if we could. And we were, and I was also like, mesmerized because he was an actor, but he and his friends, were acting, but they were directing and they were producing, and they were like, oh my God, like, who are these people? They can do everything. Right. And that's where I started to be like, and he was finishing color correction on a previous movie, and he invited the crew, like the cast, to see the process, and we went there. And I've been only in the post-production room to do ADR, but that's it.
Yeah.
So I was there seeing a session, how it worked, like, no, just go back, we need, here, lower the volume, here we need to ADR this, here we need to do like Foley's, here, and I was like, how do you know? I don't hear anything, right? I don't notice anything.
Yeah.
And it was color and sound, I remember. So, but that got me curious about it. And then, I don't know, I think we developed, common interests beside just being actors. And we were talking. And again, it was not only the two of us, but it was like a group of friends. And we were talking about doing our own stuff, producing more, creating our own opportunities. And that sounded really challenging and exciting. So we were on the same page in things that we wanted to explore and do more of. So
the rest is history.
I think all I said doesn't answer your question. I know that. I don't know how to. I think time will tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Time and take a chance and be willing to be let down
Explore.
With grace.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually something I think is kind of missing when I go out and look at how relationships play out in the world or on social media in particular. It's like everyone's so cynical. It's like who told you every single thing you get involved in was going to be perfect and work out for you? Who gave you that expectation? Yeah. Maybe it was your boomer mother or something. I don't know, but it's not the real world at all.
It's not.
And things can go bad. And that's okay. You just move forward with grace.
But I think it's also, it's the society. I think it comes from like, it's what's expected from us. Like you go to a job and you're not, they don't expect you to fail.
Yeah.
If you fail, you get fired. Everything the others expect from us is to be perfect. And then there is no space for mistakes. And I'm telling you, like producing this first movie, I made a lot of mistakes, right? That's the only way to learn. I keep making mistakes.
We have a series on the podcast called Mistakes in the Making. And we would love for you to do one. And it's all about things there's no way you could learn it in film school or acting school. And you just have to experience those mistakes. They're like 3 to 5 minutes long. And they've been so popular that we just are flooded with requests to do them now from different creatives that we've interviewed. Because the other cool thing about what Guillermo did is that I think a lot of creatives are like that. They're like, hey, we're doing this. You guys should come see the session. You guys should see what it's like, get the experience, as long as you're within the circle of trust. Like, hey, come in. I'll share my skill set, my experience with you. And I think that's what's happening with this podcast and with Mistakes in the Making, that series that we do. There's a hunger to share. In that spirit, what are the two best pieces of advice you've received in your career, and who did they come from?
Well, the first one would be, don't wait until you're ready, because you'll never be ready. Like, let me study a lot. Let me wait until I have a better English. Let me wait until I study more production.
Yeah.
Let me shadow so many directors to direct the first thing. And then you have 10, 20, 30 years and you have done nothing because you're waiting that, specific moment when you feel you're ready.
Yeah.
You're never ready. So to me, it's like the earlier you can start like jumping on things and making those mistakes, the earlier you're going to learn, right?
I love it.
I think that's the most important one. And the other one would be just kill the mind. Don't think that much,
I love that as well. That's almost like a succinct way of saying number one, or maybe you say number two first, kill the mind, then just go for it.
Yeah. Makes sense.
I love both of those.
It's an actor's skill. Like as an actor, you have to kill the mind when you're on set, because if you're thinking, then you're not, and you're not connecting, right? And it's so hard, like, to kill the mind sometimes. Oh, especially if you see the director like didn't smile back, and then you start, he didn't like it. I'm not doing it well, or whatever, and that's it. Yeah, it's over. Like, for your creativity and for your craft. So, but it applies to everything, to producing or to any creative endeavor.
Yeah, all you have to do to test that is to meditate. So I had my meditation session that I did it yesterday. And this one was for 30 minutes. And for the first 20 minutes, it was all monkey mind. Yeah. I thought of money. I thought of my to-do list. Yeah. I'm supposed to be silent and relaxed. I'm supposed to be kind of saying my mantra over and over again. And I'm saying that it's almost like counting sheep. I'm saying it, but in between that is, you better do this. You better not forget to do that. Yeah. Oh, you're hungry. Oh, you're on a diet though. And then it's like, and then you think about sex, and then you think about this. It's like you're thinking about all of the like primordial kind of bullshit that clogs your brain. And then for the last 10 minutes, I hit it, and it was like, oh, I was totally clear. So clear, I almost felt like I was floating. I almost fell asleep. And so that 10 minutes of clarity was great, but that 20 minutes just shows you that is what you're thinking about even when you're not being quiet. Mm-hmm. And just the fact that you were quiet, now it became magnified and elevated, and you're like, wow, this is my brain. My brain is on nonstop. I need to kill that and flatten my ego and do all these other things so that I can make a pathway for that creative, or what one of my music mentors told me, letting God in the room, so to speak. You talked about the skill of acting. If you had 1 month to teach a brand new actor or actress how to get prepared for a role, what would be the first 3 things you'd teach them?
Well, I think I would go back to what I learned especially in HB studio. Mm-hmm. And the first thing would be, know your previous circumstance, know everything you can about your role, and know your physicality. There are amazing exercises about physicality, which are like, it's difficult to just like, when you see an actor, right, and he has to talk and he has to cook at the same time, that's one of the most difficult things to do, like when you're training, because you cannot like do both at a time. You're focused on the lines, on the intention, and this is not organic, right? So So there are so many amazing exercises in that regard, just to combine both of them. And it's the more you know your character and the previous circumstances and the objective, what you want from the scene, and have the intention of sending an action with every single line, as we do in real life. And then the moment you step on stage, where you're on a set, just, you already worked on that, and now just be you and be present and receive, listen to the other. Many times we as actors make the mistake of, waiting for their line to finish to tell our lines, and have a preconception of how we want it to sound, or what emotion we want to endow in this particular moment. And that's not working most of the time. So the more you listen and then you're connected, as in any conversation, then I don't have to pretend I'm acting. I'm just like, I'm seeing you
You're
right
present.
now. You're not pretending that you're listening or paying attention to me or understanding what I'm saying. You're just there doing it organically.
Right.
But as actors, we usually tend to be like, let me, I'm listening, so I have to be, moved here in this word, and then that's not working. So, and that's being present is, I think, one of the hardest exercises, as an actor.
Yes.
And we go back to what we were talking about, killing the mind, especially when you are on stage or on set or in life in general. I think acting is very, very like life itself,
Yes. Yeah. The art imitating life, or vice versa. And so for those listening at home, number one is know your lines, so that you
know
can
your lines. Yeah.
Organic. Number two is be listening and present, not just wait for your counterpart's line to end. And third is kill the mind, so you can be clear and do it as you do it in real life. And this conversation just has been so amazing. I have to tell you, I've learned so much.
It's been amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like I know you, like I've known you my whole life, which is what I love. I love that feeling at the end of a conversation.
We have to do something together.
Now we do. Yes, that's exactly how I feel. I feel like we should do a co-production together.
Be on set together. We have to create something, and we have to just go and do it. And then we'll do a podcast on how
about
we did
that.
it.
We'll do about
Nothing,
exactly. And I just can't thank you enough for you're in Mexico City right now. You just came off set. You took some time for this audience and for me, and that means the world to me. Can you tell, and to us, can you tell everybody where they can find you on social media, on the internet, where they can even see some of your work? And you have a lot of work, by the way.
Our website is Golden Ceiba Productions.com. We have our projects there. I personally use my favorite social media is Instagram. I'm on Instagram as @Zair Montes, my name. I'm also on Twitter, but I have to confess that I don't use it that much. And on Instagram, I always post, a lot of jokes and silly stuff, but I also, every time we have a premiere or we're shooting something or something new that we want to share, I use Instagram a lot.
Beautiful. And you have a great page, by the way. We'll end on this. You are a lover of cheese, and you love Venezuelan street food. So what is your favorite cheese in Venezuelan street food? And please educate me on what Latin sour cream is.
On what?
Latin sour cream is.
Well, first of all, cheese. I love all cheese. Honestly, I think I'm like a mouse, but I love. There's one Venezuelan cheese that I crave a lot. Mm-hmm. It's called queso de mano. It's kind of like hand cheese.
Yeah, it's
like the type of fresh cheese. I mean, maybe I'm going to do a research. If I find that any Venezuelan place in Tennessee where you can get it, I'll figure out so you can try it. It's hard to explain, but it's a fresh cheese and it's very particular. It's good to feel arepas. I don't know if
I love arepas.
Talking about like Venezuelan street food. Yeah. Arepas are like my favorite. Like I have them for breakfast a lot. Mm-hmm. I love them.
They're so good.
Have you tried?
Yeah, I've had an arepa. I've had a lot of those. Yeah. I love them. Yeah.
Okay.
Big fan.
So
we have that in common for sure. Yeah.
Okay, good.
But I'm sure they're like a ton better in Venezuela. I don't think I've had like the real deal because I've had them here and just like around the United States. Yeah. I do remember going to Guatemala, and I was getting some street tacos in Guatemala, and I noticed that they were like using this white powder to pat out their tortilla, and it was so delicious looking. And I asked one of the ladies, I said, "So what is that powder?" And she's like, "Oh, chalk." I said, "Like cooking chalk? Like you mean like flour?" She goes, "Oh no, chalk." And I was like, "Oh my God, I've been eating chalk." They use I guess it doesn't get anybody sick, and it didn't get me sick. But they're using chalk, like from the chalkboard.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
to pat out their tortillas and cook them on the...
Yeah.
I didn't know that could work.
I hear you. There is something about tortillas and tacos in particular, like something happens, like even if it's the same Mexican who does it here and then he goes to the States and then everything changes. I don't know. I think it has to do with the water, the flour, I don't know, but like also every time now that I'm in Mexico City, I'm like taking advantage of all street food, tacos and burritos and, the real deal.
I love it.
I'm a foodie. I love eating. So
I always tell people the best food might have four wheels. The best restaurant might just be like a Mexican or Venezuelan taco stand on the side of the road. Don't sleep on it. Because, hey, I mean, they small shop, they get to focus on a couple of things they're really, really great at. Like they're great at tortas, they're great at arepas, they're great at tacos. That's all they do. And boom, that's a good situation for you. So, and this has been a great situation for us. Everyone listening, do go out and watch her films. You can find them all over the internet. I know I watched Havana Instant, which was a great independent film. Guys, you can learn from watching this movie. This movie was made in Cuba, and it was made by the skin of their teeth. And you won't believe what you see on the screen. The performances are amazing. And I watched it on Tubi. There are other places you can watch it. Her new film, Rumba Love, is out. The Flowers 2 TV series coming, season 2 on Amazon Prime. Is that right?
Yes.
Boom. That's going to be incredible. And I cannot wait for the release of Dopamine. The trailer is absolutely hilarious. And you can see that on her website at Golden Ceiba Productions.com. Zair, I love this conversation, and I hope that we get to do a round 2. And in the meantime, keep killing it out there and doing a great thing for everybody.
Thank you. And thank you for all the work you did. You did all the research, and I'm impressed, and I really, really, really enjoyed this time. And thank you. And I'm here, and I mean it. I mean, we should do things together, and we should just, do more and more and connect more.
Consider it done. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Be good. Hey gang, one more thing before you go. I want to talk to you about Indie Insights. Indie Insights is our bi-weekly newsletter and love note to the film industry, movies, and the creatives that make them, not to mention you, our esteemed listeners. Inside, you'll find curated industry trends, articles, exclusive commentary, and underappreciated films from filmmakers like you worldwide. And the best part is that it's completely free. So join today at www.bonsai.film. It just takes a few seconds, and once you sign up, you'll get the very next newsletter. It's that simple. Go to www.bonsai.film www.bonsai.film to get indie insights, our bi-weekly newsletter, and join a network of film creatives like yourself. And don't worry, we'll never sell your information or spam you with a bunch of nonsense emails, just the bi-weekly film industry goodness you need. And if you ever tire of Indie Insights, we hope not, but if you do, simply unsubscribe. No gimmicks, no games. So, one more time, go to www.bonsai.film to get Indie Insights for free. And thank you for listening.